Today we will discuss what is organic workflow and how Ashlar-Vellum is uniquely positioned to support this free-flowing design process. Hello, I'm Julie Bowe, Vice President of Ashlar-Vellum. Organic workflow is what Ashlar-Vellum calls the nonlinear creative process that allows designers to create outstanding products through easy design iteration, transparent tools, and hands-on control of the production process. To better understand this creative process, we interviewed 15 product designers from around the world. We've taken that many hours of recordings and pared them down to just over 15 minutes of sound bites for this presentation. We began by asking our designers to comment on their creative process and the words organic workflow. Here's what they had to say.
The word organic workflow basically identifies the ability to start a program with any media, whether it be CAD, paper, clay, digitization, one of a number of tools out there. The other part of organic is that regardless of media project, they don't really have a true start and they don't really have a true finish, that everything's interconnected.
Rather than being a serial process of design, it would be a process where there can be input at any point along the line, and things can be changed without the whole thing falling down into a pile of nothing.
That's more or less the term that I have been using for several years when I'm sort of talking to customers, trying to explain how things get done. It's not so much a linear workflow as in step one, step two, step three. What tends to happen is as you develop a product, sometimes you have to go back and revisit certain areas, and it's like a cyclical thing over and over again.
If you're doing a design process, there's no process the same. It depends on the stuff you're working on, it depends on all the people you're working with, it depends on the company that's actually giving you the project. So there are a lot of components in the projects that differ greatly when you compare it. And then there is, of course, the dynamic of the process itself. At some point you get stuck, you have to go to a side way, your client is not happy, or he is happy and you're not happy. You're never really sure where it's actually going to head when you start off a project. So that's kind of exciting. Some clients always want to know where you're heading, and always just like to keep the end open. But for me, that's a very organic process.
Well, the way I look at organic workflow, I kind of look at it from two different points of view. The first one being, what directions can I go in once the work begins? And the other one is, from what position can I begin working?
It kind of typifies the type of work I do, and that is product design. But as with any kind of creative process, it's a non-linear process. The image that comes to mind is a water drop running down a glass, and although the water drop runs in the same general direction, it twists and turns and grows as additional water flows into it and hits interference.
It's a natural flow of the ideas and processes that you would use to get to the result that you're looking for.
A lot of people try and pin down the point where people get ideas. And in my definition of this, I talk about illumination. People get ideas the way you get a joke. You don't force it. It happens to you. If you read anything about great thinkers, they always talk about the 3 Bs, bed, bath, and bus. Mundane places where ideas come to you.
So briefly, we learned that organic workflow starts anywhere, moves freely in any direction, sustains change while maintaining integrity, and fosters illumination from within the ordinary. Through these interviews, we also discovered a growing trend for designers to be involved in every aspect of product development and production. No longer do designers create pretty pictures of the outside, then throw it over the wall to the engineers to complete the technical bits. Instead, more and more designers are doing it all.
Product design is changing massively. The reality of the matter is you've got to do both. It's got to work really well and it's got to look great. You can't just address one. More and more clients, I think, will respect you and you stand a much better chance of winning work if you can demonstrate. And not only can you make things bang on appropriate in terms of their aesthetic, but they will work and they will be manufacturable and they'll be cheap to manufacture because you're familiar with the manufacturing processes and you're also also familiar with the interface with industry, and that you can come up with new, innovative ways of making things work cheaply and better, and package them to look great.
A UK design company is expected to produce the lot. They're expected to produce all the production data, surfacing, internal features, everything. You know, if you look at any of the big UK design companies, you'll see that they're actually, you know, doing the whole project, start to finish. Sometimes including things like electronics as well. I think, to be honest with you, there's a great misunderstanding with a lot of engineers and industrial designers about what you actually do and what you actually don't do. I think the boundaries are getting merged.
In Australia, if you're an industrial designer, you have to be able to do the entire job, one end to the other. So we tend to get lumbered with the whole lot, including dealing with the toolmaker. Every consumer product is an industrial product. They're no different to each other apart from who is the end user. Consumer product's probably got a lot of styling in it and an industrial product doesn't. But mechanically there's that problem.
You see a lot of young designers starting little offices and doing stuff for themselves. And when you have a very small team, you're forced to do the whole process. So I do believe that there's a trend towards smaller scale and more hands-on design.
For me, the key part of this is exporting 3D files for tooling production. Because in the past, all the drawings that designers used to make were useless to production. They had to redo them completely. Today, what we do, we use the 3D files to produce the 3D tools. Our drawings are not thrown to garbage because we, as designers, oblige ourselves to know a lot about engineering so that we can send parts to evaluation that are very close to the final parts that will be made because we have all the knowledge necessary to produce this way.
In larger design firms that I know, you have the designers and you have the technical guys. And for me, if you want to make a good product, you really have to be involved, and then I mean the same people throughout the whole process. And not just a design manager that watches over it all, but you, as a designer, you really want to, well, look at Apple. I mean, these guys go to China and change production process if it's necessary. So this is a very typical example of a design process that's hands-on all the way to the box where it's packed. They don't hire a different firm to do the packaging. I mean, this is one process, and it's hands-on all the way down.
Today's trend is toward the merging roles of designer and engineer, and participation of designers in all areas of the production process. Effective software must support the product designer's organic workflow. This is accomplished through support for multiple nonlinear workflows, allowing history to be used on demand as needed or ignored when not. Tools that disappear into the workflow, simply working without thought. An interactive palette of tools that includes wireframe, solids, and surfaces, renderings, and engineering drawings without having to change from one mode to another. And by facilitating continuous communication, by providing any type of deliverable at any point in the process. Ashlar-Vellum software is uniquely positioned to provide these 5 things. But let's look at each of these from our designer's point of view. First, an organic workflow is certainly a nonlinear or non-serial workflow.
If you're a mechanical engineer, your working process usually is very straightforward. You get a clear starting point and an end point. So the software that a mechanical engineer uses is always very straightforward in the way you use it. It's always in the same way. But for a designer in the design process, tools have to fit in any moment in the design process. Sometimes I just use 3D digital tools to help me make a good perspective line drawings for hand drafting. But sometimes I make really hardcore technical 3D exploded views. So it just depends on the process where this software is going to be plugged in. So the software has to be very, very flexible.
I wanted something I could just play with. Some people like to have all the data up front, all the tools possible to do all sorts of things. I mean, you need the basic ones, obviously, but I just really needed something which was intuitive and that I could play around with. Everybody's way of working is slightly different, I think, anyway.
So what you're doing from your end has to be organic to match all these different ways of working. If you're going to do something good, in terms of design anyway, for me it's that. It's really, I'm not ashamed of saying it, it's playing around.
In terms of organic workflow, what I found in using the Ashlar products is that I can go from perception all the way to manifestation within the product because there's a certain facile quality of it and a number of different ways that I can approach things where I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to arrive at stuff, but it almost feels like sketching. And it's not a linear process. It goes through various iterations until I've arrived at something that I find is satisfactory.
We were making the analogy that Cobalt works the way a designer's mind works. It's very spontaneous, well, what about that? Let's try this. Let's explore these other variations. It's a non-linear kind of process to work in Cobalt. Compare that with SolidWorks, which is very linear. It's very much designed the way an engineer thinks and works.
In a linear process, you may well have made a decision 10 days ago in your design that will not allow you to make this change you want to make now. You just can't do it. Whereas the program will just let you add onto it regardless. That's a good thing. The guys that get the best out of SolidWorks are the ones who think about every possible event in the future. I may want to change this, I may want to change that. Most people can't do that. It's like being a good chess player. You've got to think way ahead. It requires a great deal of skill and experience to get those programs to do what you want.
Software that supports organic workflow is nonlinear. It fosters flexibility, spontaneity, and free play. While parametric history is a designer's most powerful tool, it can also be the bane of his or her existence. If a designer is free to use parametric history when needed, yet ignore it during the times when it's not, it greatly increases the creative process. Let's see how.
One of the things that I think Cobalt really lets you do in terms of organic workflow is it really lets you explore the evolution of your design. You start off with something that you might like and you see 3 or 4 directions, so you can explore each of them very quickly in it. You don't have to worry about history or anything. Cobalt really gives you the freedom and you still have the history. I'm not saying that it doesn't, it's just not yelling at you.
So easy to change something when we have them made in 3D with a history. So that, for me, is the key part of this process. Once you have a history, you have all the work done in a way, you can change it completely and without so much work, because in the past we had to redesign. We couldn't use everything that was done before. So this is a lot of reduction in time.
We use history in Cobalt a lot. We use that every day because, of course, to be able to undo things as you did them is extremely important. The nice thing about it is that it is as defined as you want it to be. You can run with the numbers if you want to go that way, or you can completely ignore them if you want to go that way. Or you can kind of do a mix between the two. You're not defined by what the dimension of X is compared to Y.
But that's the kind of thing we're talking about, is rigid sort of parametrically controlled, dimensionally controlled construction methods are fine for certain tasks, but for other kinds of tasks, you need that sort of free-form approach, if you like things like Cobalt offer.
Parametric history makes design changes fast and easy, but it can also constrain creativity. Ashlar-Vellum software uniquely allows designers to use history or not to explore a design as best fits the process. Like all great tools, our product design software must disappear into the background, becoming an automatic extension of the designer as he or she concentrates on the project at hand. Let's see how.
If you're thinking about the tool, you're not thinking about your project. That was the immediate attraction with Vellum. I can work in the tool without thinking about it. All other software that requires you to really be a slave to some programmers' misunderstanding of how people work, I tend to avoid. The moment that you are distracted by having to be a slave to the program, then the workflow is stopped. You're not thinking about your creative process. You're thinking about how to make the program work.
We use Cobalt because we don't really have to think when we're working in Cobalt. Once you learn the interface, which has a pretty quick learning curve, you can just mash and push and play and get what you want. And the nice thing about it compared to sketching is then you can spin it 90 degrees and look what it looks like on the side without having to redraw everything.
You take any other software in this 3D world, and I've tried the majority of them, and I have never found something easier than the Ashlar way to do things. So for me, this is a very key point.
I did try a lot of 3D programs, and most of them simply did not allow you to play. I think I made it 3/4 of the way through the Vellum tutorial, and it was like at one point the light just went on, and I went, oh, I get it.
When you say the program works the way you think, it really is not a cliche, because even though I've been using it for years and years, I continually learn new things. And one of the ways I learn it is I say to myself, well, I'd like to do this to this 3D model. I wonder if the program will do this. And then I try that series of tools, and, voila, it does it. And I'm going, oh, my God, it just constantly surprises me that it actually does work the way you think it should work.
Ashlar-Vellum tools are so transparent, they don't require the designer to think about them. They work the way a designer thinks. They are easy to learn and allow the designer to simply play. Designers require a holistically integrated palette of both engineering and design tools that includes wireframe, solids, and surfaces without switching from one mode to another. They want to freely sketch, develop the model, provide photorealistic renderings and animations, and precision engineering drawings, all using the same program.
And Cobalt gives us the power to, after we do, for instance, a part, we can change the inclination of walls so that it can be took from the tooling. So we can redesign and change everything, all details that in the evaluation of the engineering or the tool maker should be changed. So as designers, this tool gives us a lot of power.
I work with the Ashlar-Vellum products for that specific reason, that I can work within one application and explore the forms that I have in my mind by working with the tools that are offered in the software. And I can do that because there's a whole range of capabilities within one package, whether it's surfaces, solids, even the 2D wireframe tools. I can work seamlessly between all of those three and explore these ideas in what I would call an organic way. I think that's what really is the underlying power of Ashlar-Vellum software.
I love this combination of lines, solids, and surface. This is unique, and for me this is absolutely basic, because it's so good to be able to go from one thing to the other.
Ashlar-Vellum provides a uniquely holistic palette of tools that give designers power that was previously only available to engineers. We offer a hybrid, non-modal interface that includes wireframe, surfaces, and solids, with integrated photorealistic rendering and precision engineering drawings. Because product design is an organic process, different deliverables are demanded by different people along the way. Our software never demands that X, Y, and Z be completed before A, B, or C can be shown.
Through Cobalt, I'm designing and building in 3D space the actual products the same way I would build them in the shop. I'm looking at the computer as a digital workshop because it does everything that I myself would do on the shop floor, but with some other really great auxiliary effects, and those are the ability to pass that information along to a myriad of other people. And those other people can be anywhere from the client to the in-house people who are the salespeople, marketing people, the manufacturing people.
The design phase is all the way through to the end of the product when it's released to the public. And it really doesn't start and stop. You have to be communicating from the get-go to all the different groups. Some may come in a little bit later, like the logistics and shipping and packaging people, but from the start, you need to have your designer, your engineer, if you have an engineer assigned. You have to have your tool makers or manufacturing people involved, and also your marketing people. They need to be at the front end because they're giving you the variables they have to work with. So it's basically taking a room full of variables and reducing it down to a design direction.
I can reel off all the views of the project. At the same time, there'll be those QuickTime elements, 3D films of each piece. And as the project develops, I'll redo those and have flat work as well to accompany it, to illustrate those modifications. So it's real time. It's on the piece all the way through. I mean, I've got the prototype on the screen. Fantastic for me because I've got it and I can just reel off plans when I like and have things made up or do it myself as it's going along. And then at the end, I clean up the plans, as you imagine, into 2D files.
With Ashlar-Vellum software, pass any type of 2D or 3D data to any of these people at any point in the process. Just to recap, the organic workflow within Ashlar-Vellum software uniquely supports a nonlinear workflow, history on demand, transparent tools, a holistic tool palette, and continuous cross-team communication. As we approach the last section of this presentation, let's see how Ashlar-Vellum's philosophy of organic workflow fosters innovation and compelling form in the consumer product design market.
I found that it's much faster to take that same process of being in the workshop or to start in this program, but to not start with an engineer's point of view, to start with a designer's point of view, which is to sketch, I would even say play, to take the idea and try as many different things as you can. When you get an idea and you manifest it in the program, and then you can reflect upon that and understand new things about it, it leads the design further along in terms of a better resolution.
It's almost like sketching on paper, but the CAD way of doing it for designers, and we can really look at it in 3D form very quickly and just be, have this freedom to really explore ideas, not be hindered by the actual program itself, just making what we want come alive.
Our ability to visualize our dreams and make sure they're realistic and credible and we can execute those dreams makes our life much better, and it makes our customers' lives much better because we produce far better products because we can experiment and we can try different things and we can look at ways of making the product. We're in the business of making amazing products.
As you can see, Ashlar-Vellum designers create some of the most amazing products in the world. By starting with a designer's point of view and being allowed to experiment, explore, and play, they not only make their designs come alive, they make life better. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Julie Bowe, Vice President of Ashlar-Vellum, and I'd like to thank all of the designers that made this presentation possible. Please look for more of their work among the proven success stories and in the gallery of our website.